So 3D avatars are incredibly trendy, and if you know me, I'm all about creating stylized character illustrations, but I've never really brought too much sculpting to the channel. But today is going to be my first episode in a series of videos where together we're going to transform the starting cube into a cute sculpted character illustration. But as always, my name is Keelan, and if you're ready to jump in with me today, grab yourself a nice cup of tea, coffee, hot chocolate, whatever you're into, and let's get into it. Alright, welcome back everybody. Hope everybody's keeping well and hope you're feeling good, nice and hyped and ready to jump in with me today. The focus of this tutorial is going to be turning our default cube into a nice sculpted character stylized head. And then some other videos down the line, we're going to be taking a look at how to perhaps create some nice stylized character hair, bit of texture painting, and also we'll finish up with some compositing and lighting and rendering. But as a couple of notes before we jump in, make sure you keep an eye down here. That's going to show you my mouse clicks and my keyboard inputs, and it's probably worth having at least Blender 3.3 installed just to be nice and up to date to make sure you have all the tools. And even though this is catered to beginners, it's probably worth just having a general basic understanding of Blender's interface, in addition to just knowing how to orbit in the viewport, just so you don't get lost along the way. But nonetheless, I will try my best to keep you in the loop, so do not worry. I'm sure you will have a good time all the same. So let's start by getting rid of some of these things. We're not going to use the light, not going to use the camera. We're going to get rid of the default timeline, and we're going to hide the gizmos. So now we've got this nice, big and beautiful minimal viewport to work with. So, in order to start sculpting with our default cube here then, we are going to need more geometry, and we can create that nice and simply by going into our modifiers and added in a subdivision surface modifier. To start this off, I am just going to use a subdivision level of 2, so that we can go ahead and apply that, and as we go along we will increment this and add more subdivisions to have a nice smooth finish as we go along. But I think this will do just to block out the general shape of the head. So with that done, let's go ahead and jump now into our sculpt mode. Now you may or may not be familiar with the sculpt tools already, but what I generally recommend, just in case, is by dragging out this section once and twice, you're going to have a nice little layout here with all the labels next to the individual tools, so that way you can learn the general names and their function. And to start this off, we are just going to begin by stretching out the general shape of our head here to begin the general shape up. And for that, I'm going to be using the grab tool here. And as we go along, you want to make sure that you come to here to enable x-axis mirroring. That's just going to make sure that anything we do on one side is automatically going to occur in the other. And you can see right now we've got a 3D cursor here. And when we click and drag, we are making changes to our mesh here. Right now, the 3D cursor is far too small and we're making these little spikes on our mesh. So if you're trying to create something like Darth Maul, probably pretty good, but in our case, not so good. So I'm going to undo that. And what we're going to do, we can either come into our radius here and increase the size of our cursor, or what you're probably going to want to get used to doing is pressing F as you go along. And if we move our cursor left and right like this, we can change the general radius. And right now I want it to be quite large to start blocking this out. So something like that maybe. And from there, let's go ahead and in front view, I'm going to start dragging down the front of the head. And this is just going to be where the chin will be. And I want the head, top of the head to come up a little larger because I am going for a stylized character approach, which is always nice because you're not really working with realistic proportions, so nothing needs to be too exact with this. And just remember, we are working in 3D, so you are going to need to jump into different views to start stretching out your character and making sure he looks good from all angles. And what I'm generally looking for here is a nice jawline that comes down, and then it's going to come up to meet the back of the skull. So I want to bring up the back of the head here to get this sort of shape going on. Just adjusting my cursor with F as I go along until I get the sort of shape I like. And just like I said earlier, make sure you are rotating and checking this from all different angles. And now in top view, maybe something like that. I do want to bring the jaw out and make it a little bit more defined, but before we do that, it's probably worth now adding in some extra geometry. And like I said earlier, we can go ahead and do that with another subdivision modifier. In this case, I think I'm going to go for 3 This part is generally just preference, depending on how much geometry you want, but another 3 should be fine, so we now have 5 in total. And we're going to continue sculpting until we get a general shape that we like. Perhaps I'll bring the jaw out a bit more here, make it a little bit more defined. But I may or may not speed through this section a little bit, but feel free to take your time with this till you achieve a general look that you like. And don't be too fussy with this. End of the day, we're still learning and nothing is going to be perfect. Maybe something like that is looking pretty cute. Let me make the chin a little bit pointier. Maybe I'll smooth this out slightly. Oh, and that's probably something I should explain. So during your time sculpting in Blender, at any point in time, you can hold Shift and click to begin smoothing over different sections using the smooth tool. And that's just going to nicely smooth over different sections. I'm just clicking around a little bit here just to smooth the chin line out a bit more. Or the jawline rather. But I think for the purposes of this tutorial, something like that should look pretty good. And I'm also, while I'm here actually, I'm going to come into my drop down up here and I'm going to switch to a matte cap. This is just preference once again, but in here I like to use this red one because I think it looks pretty nice when you're sculpting. Now let's look at blocking out some of the other features such as the neck and the ears. And to do that, let's firstly go ahead and jump back into object mode here. And I'm just going to go ahead and I want to bring my head up maybe to around there. And we're just going to go ahead and do a little bit of box modeling to get the basic shapes that we're looking for here. And I'm going to start with the neck. So let's go ahead and do Shift A and we can add in a nice new cube. And I'm going to use a subdivision surface modifier to start smoothing this over. Perhaps give it 3 subdivisions, and I'm going to leave the subdivision modifier active at the moment. Then we can shrink this down with S, and then I'm going to jump in the side view and let's bring our head forward a little bit with G, Y to lock that to the Y axis. And all I'm looking to do is to have a nice neck that comes up like this. So tab into edit mode on our cube here, 3 to select faces, and then clicking on this top face in side view, we're going to extrude this up so it's a nicely curved shape. And what I like to do in these sort of circumstances is rather than just extruding with E and moving and adjusting, you can actually hold Control and right click to keep extruding in different directions like this. Obviously that neck's a bit large, and I think I'm going to scale this down slightly too actually. And then back in edit mode, let's hold Control, right click, and then we can just adjust as we need. Something like that I think will do for now, and we can make some fine adjustments. And I'm going to toggle X-ray view here, make sure I press 1 to select vertices, and I'm just going to highlight these. I want to adjust this to get a bit more of a curved neck shape, and we can flatten out these sections with Control R to add in some loop cuts, drag them down, undo that, and bring that here, something like that. And I'm just looking for a general curved shape to block this out. Back into object mode, disable X-ray view. Okay, that looks pretty good. Still a little bit too thick, so I'm going to go into front view, tab back into edit mode, then select faces. We can select this entire loop here by holding Alt and selecting an edge. And with that, I'm just going to scale this down a little bit to give it a little bit more of a skinny neck look to suit this stylized character. Maybe something like that. And you can keep readjusting this as much as you like. You know, I'm pretty fussy with these things, so you know, I can spend far too much time here. But I think something like that should do the job. Perfect. Okay, so now let's block out some ears too, and we're going to use pretty much the same method, but let's go ahead and move our 3D cursor up to here first with Shift S, cursor to the selected object, Shift A, add the cube, scale this down, bring this out, and then S and Y I think to make this a little thinner. And I'm not going for realistic ears here, I am keeping this nice and stylized, So we're going to subdivide this again, 3 subdivisions, and then actually let's shade smooth everything too. So I'm going to highlight everything, right click shade smooth, and then let's go ahead and just scale up our ear to start. And in my right side view, I like to line mine generally up with the jaw section here, and from above I like to tilt them out to have it something like that for now. And then let's go ahead and mirror this across to the other side by adding another modifier for our mirror, and the object is going to be the head itself. And so if I jump to front view to have a little look here, perhaps bring these down slightly. Okay, how is this looking? I think that's looking pretty good as far as a general block out goes. He is going to have nice big ears because I like that look. That's just me. But as I said, feel free to adjust this and make this your own. At this point in time, we're good now to start remeshing these to make them one uniform object so we can start doing some sculpting. So in order to do that, we need these to be we need this to be an actual mesh. Right now it's technically just a preview because under the hood you can see that we still got the square look. And in order to do that, all we need to do is to apply this here. And what I normally recommend as well, at this point in time, because we are about to remesh and do some heavier sculpting, it's a good option to save up. And I generally like to keep backups of my different stages too. So perhaps we'll make a duplicate with this with Shift D, and then you can press M, make a new collection. I'm just gonna call this backup. And then you can also disable this in here to go ahead and make sure it's disabled to the extent that it's not affecting your performance in any way. And now let's go ahead and join up these objects to do some remeshing. So initially, to make these one single object, click on the neck, then shift click on the head, and we can either press Ctrl J or right click and just click join right here. And now they are one object, but technically they are still separate because if I use L to select them, you can see that they are still selectable as independent objects. So what we need to do at this point is to jump back into sculpt mode. And what we're going to do is utilize this remesh option up here. Now this is something you do need to be careful with, because if you go too low with your number, you're essentially going to crash your computer or crash Blender. And so take your time. I tend to start with 0.05, and the smaller this number goes, the more vertices it's going to add to your mesh to give you a higher dense mesh is generally the term. And we can also disable the face set, and that's going to remove this color here to signify which object is which. So let's go ahead and remesh. I'm going to start with 0.05, take away my face set, and click remesh. So just like that, you can now see this is one uniform mesh. Although generally for me, this isn't enough detail. So I'm going to undo and then just slowly increment. So perhaps we'll do 0.02 now and see what sort of density we have. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. I'm pretty happy with that. And if you do care about exact numbers, you can come into here and turn on statistics. I'm actually going to turn off text info, and you can see we're now working with 50,000 faces on our shape here. But that's great now. That's plenty to start sculpting with, and we can start smoothing this over to make this look nice and connected. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to hold shift and just start smoothing this over little by little. Just take your time with this and adjust your cursor where you need it to. And I'm just going to make the transition between the neck and the head a little smoother, just so we have this nice finish to the back of the head, something like that. And you can see you've also got these lines here. You can also smooth those over, something like that. And I think that's looking pretty good, guys. This is turning out quite well. I've recorded this about 3 times. Well, I like this one. It's looking good. And if you're still with me right now, congratulations. You're doing really well. I'm just going to jump to side view. Whew. So that's looking nice and smooth. Look at that head. Beautiful. Right. So now we need to do a bit of sculpting on the ears, I think. So let's go ahead and jump back into object mode. And of course we do have 2 ears right now because of the mirror modifier, but when you sculpt in with like modifiers active, it can affect the performance. So generally let's come down to here and disable the mirror modifier just for the time being, and I'm going to apply the subdivision. So the mirror modifier is still here. We've just disabled it in the viewport for the time being. And what I want to do now is go ahead and start sculpting a little bit more shape. Oh, and if you ever see this pop up here, ununiform scale or non-uniform scale, come back into object mode. If I press N on my object here to open up my N menu, and in item, you can see these are all the different data properties for this object, and you generally want all of these scale variables when you're sculpting to be 1. So you can just do that by applying the scale with Control A, and then apply a scale, and that's going to nicely reset those variables so that when we move and adjust and transform this shape, it's all nice and uniform. Okay, so let's press N to close that up, and now I'm going to jump back into sculpt mode. I think all I'm going to do for this initially is I want a bit more of an indentation here, and then perhaps I'll adjust the overall shape of the earth slightly. But for most of this, I'm just going to be using the grab tool again, so we can press G or select it over here. And then I'm going to press F to increase the scale on this. And let's focus in on this. Oh, a quick tip, guys. A lot of people don't know about this, but you can actually hold Alt and the middle mouse click on any section to jump to it. I thought that's a very handy tip that I don't see a lot of people utilizing. But at this point, if I stop rambling, we're just going to start pulling the ear in like this to give him a little bit of an indentation. I'm using a mouse and keyboard here, by the way. Normally I'd use a display tablet or a tablet in general, but I just wanted this tutorial to be a little bit more accessible for everybody, and I just wanted everybody to see that you can achieve pretty good results even if you don't have all the tools. Right, let me jump into front view here, and I'm just going to make the shape a little less perfectly round, a little bit more abnormal, so it's not too perfect. Something like that. And now I want to subdivide this a little bit more, maybe give another 2, and apply this. And then I think using the draw tool up here, now the draw tool, if I shrink this down using F again, it's just going to let us extrude different sections. But with any sculpting tool in Blender, you can actually hold Control, and then that's going to invert that extrusion. So instead of drawing right now, it's going to draw inwards. So you can see we're making little indentations here. And I'm going to draw a little bit of, I don't know what it's called, you know, that section of the ear here. And then I'm just going to smooth it over. Don't know what it's called, but I just want to give a little bit of an impression like there's something there for that. But I think for the purposes of this tutorial, that's a pretty cute looking ear. What do you think? Right, I'm pretty happy with that. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing as we did before. We're looking to convert this to a mesh and then remesh it along with the head so we can nicely join everything up. So back into object mode. Let's re-enable the mirror modifier. So now we nicely have 2 ears, looking very cool. And then we can apply, and then with the ears selected, shift click on the head, Control J. And then we're going to go back into sculpt mode, and then using the remesh tool, perhaps I'll increase this to, actually no, let's try 0.02 again and see how it looks. Okay, that's not too bad. It's starting to get a little bit more jaggedy around the edges here, so I think I'm going to undo and try 0.01 for this. Yeah, that looks pretty nice and smooth. And then just like we did before, make sure you have your x-axis mirroring on so it affects both sides. I'm just going to come in and start smoothing this over. Ooh, look at that beautiful transition there. I love it. Smooth it over, Casanova. Yeah, you're going to have to put up me singing for a little bit now while we do this. Right, I think that's looking good. And don't forget, you can adjust the size of your cursor as you go along to get nicely into those little crevices. Something like that. And you can see he does have this overall, you know, when you're remeshing, sometimes you can get these lines appearing. But, you know, go ahead and start smoothing them all over again. But I think this is looking pretty nice. Turning out pretty good. How are we feeling? I hope you're all having a good time. Oh, you know, these ears are cute. So once again, a lot of this is going to be subjective and down to the style that you're looking to achieve. But in my case, I'm just going to go ahead and using the draw tool again. I'm going to shrink down my cursor a little bit, making sure that my x-axis mirroring is on. And in front of you, let's go ahead and just start drawing in some eye sockets. So you can hold control, and then if I just start clicking and just making a little rotation with my cursor here, and then releasing and going again to go even deeper. And you can make this as deep as you need to fit your eyeballs. You might have big eyes, you might have little eyes, but something like that, I think, no, a little bit more. A little bit deeper, something like that I think will do for the moment. And then using our grab tool again with G, we can shape up the eyes a little bit. And I don't know why, but I like my guys with a little bit of attitude, so I tend to drop the eyes down a little bit because I think there is something cool and interesting about a character that's got a bit of attitude in his eyes. It's just a general style I've been going with for a while now. Okay, cool. I think something like that will do. And as we go along, it's probably worth adding in some eyeballs now because it just makes it a little easier to visualize what's going on. So back into object mode, and we're going to move our 3D cursor here to the eye socket. So we can hold shift and right click right here, and then shift A, and we're going to use a UV sphere in this case. I'm going to use S to scale this down, and I want to rotate this 90 degrees on the X axis. So R to rotate, X to lock that to the x-axis, then just type 90, and now you can see the circular part of the UV sphere is facing forward, and that way it just looks a bit more like an eyeball. And when you come to add shaders later, you can sort of use this as an indication of where the pupil is and such. But that looks pretty good to me, and we're going to want to bring this forward and then just make sure everything lines up nicely. Something like that. And just like with the ears earlier, in our modifiers we can add in a mirror modifier. Boom, and then we have two eyeballs looking pretty cool with some attitude. So now I want to add a nose. So what I'm going to do is I want to make sure the nose is perfectly centered, and we can do that by using this center point on the head again. So shift S, cursor to selected. So let's do shift A then, and I'm just going to do our nose with a nice cube, scaling this down, then GY to bring this out. And what I'm going to do here is just move this into place. So let's start subdividing out the nose here, and then I'm going to tab into edit mode, and using Control R, let's add in a little bit of shape to this. Whoops, Control R again. And I'm just going to line my nose up slightly like this, maybe make it a little bit wider. And as I said, guys, this is just generally my style of character. Feel free to do whatever you like. But then we can right click a shade smooth on this. And at this point in time, I think that looks pretty cool. Let's go ahead and right click and convert this to a mesh. And I'm going to go ahead and combine this with the head. And then we're going to do the same old as we did before. We're going to remesh this to make it one uniform object. So with this selected, shift click on the head, Control J, into Sculpt mode. And we're going to remesh using the 0.01 again. Boom. Nicely one uniform shape. And we can go ahead and smooth this over. And take your time around the edges here, because I do want to keep a bit of a nicely defined edge when it comes to the nose. I think something like that looks pretty cool. And then let's use the grab tool to shape this up just a little bit more. Something like that. I think that's looking pretty cool. And I think I'm gonna give him a little bit more of a pudgy cheek here. Looking pretty snazzy, if I do say so myself. But right now he can't breathe. He needs some nostrils, or at least if that's the style you want to go for. I'm gonna do this with the draw tool again, and then jump into my bottom view here. Let's go ahead and hold control and do some nice circles for nostrils. I can breathe. Something like that. That's looking pretty nice. And then you can go ahead and smooth this over you want. I think the smooth tool might be a little bit strong here. I mean, no, that should be okay. But at any point, if you want to reduce the strength or increase the strength even of your tools, you can adjust it up here. So it's right here, the smooth brush. So I can turn the strength of this down just to smooth it a little more gently. And not forgetting to check this from different angles too. So I'm just going to jump into my side view, and I want to make sure this nose looks nice and smooth, depending on how you want yours to look. Now, all that's left to do, I think, with this is to go ahead and sculpt a little mouth. And in this case, I don't do a lot of detail on my stylized mouths. I generally just do like a little line. So for that, I am actually going to turn off my x-axis mirroring. And we'll see how well I do this, because they don't always turn out the same. But I'm going to start by using the draw sharp tool, which is pretty much the same as the draw tool, except it's going to draw inwards by default, and it's going to be a little sharper too. So what I tend to do with this is to do a line. And you can also, if you want to make sure this line is nice and smooth, you can actually go into your stroke options up here and enable a stabilized stroke, and that's going to give you this nice smooth stroll effect. So let's go ahead and shrink down the size of our cursor, and it might actually be worth increasing the size, the strength of our brush just a little bit to 0.75 there. I'm just going to give him a little smile. Ooh, nice and cheeky. That looks pretty good. And now I just want to make this a little bit thinner, and for that perhaps we'll use the pinch tool, increasing this a little bit. You can go along your mouth crease here to really get a nice defined lip sort of thing. I don't know what you'd call this on a stylized character, because they don't really have lips, do they? I'm just smoothing this over a little bit here. How's that? That looks pretty cool, right? Pretty nifty. Okay, I like it. And I think that's going to just about do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and in the next episode of this, we're going to be looking at doing stylized hair and giving our guy a little bit more expression with some eyebrows and such. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified when that comes out. Other than that, the source files for this, as always, will be over on my Patreon, but I hope you very much enjoyed. My name has been Keelan. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.